good evening and welcome to The Story. I'm Evan Watson in for Pat Doris this week. We've been talking about Oregon's mental health care system all week, and we'll profile a solution to part of that crisis later on in the show. But we're going to start by talking about water. Some powerful names in politics visited the city of Boardman this week to talk about contaminated groundwater. An update to our Tainted Waters series. It's our big story tonight. If you've missed our previous coverage, there's a contaminated aquifer beneath a huge section of land near the Columbia River called the Lower Umatilla Basin. The area is 562 square miles, covering northern Umatilla and Morrow counties, about 2.5 hours east of Portland. For at least 30 years, the groundwater there has been polluted with nitrates, a chemical that can cause reproductive issues, respiratory problems, and cancer. And many in those communities get their water from private wells that draw directly from that aquifer. On Wednesday, Governor Gov Kotek and a high-level administrator from the EPA traveled to the city of Boardman to learn more about how the response is going and what else needs to be done. Environmental reporter Kale Williams has this story.
Since at least the mid-90s, it's been clear that nitrates were a problem in the groundwater of Morrow and Umatilla counties. Levels of the toxic chemical have been climbing ever since, despite action plans from committees and outcry from the community. Nitrates are the byproduct of fertilizer used in agriculture, food processing facilities, animal feedlots, and wastewater from the Port of Morrow. In 2022, a local state of emergency was declared. Bottled water was distributed, and testing began on the roughly 4,500 private wells in the area. On Wednesday, high-level officials from the state and federal government went to Boardman to hear how things were going.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Governor Kotek. I'm a special guest here.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sixkiller. I'm the regional administrator for the EPA.
Kotek and Sixkiller hosted two roundtable discussions, one with community groups and another with county officials.
There are a couple different efforts going on.
Is this going to take some time?
At the start, Kotek reiterated that she was committed to solving the public health crisis facing the rural communities.
I was here literally a year ago, meeting with some of you, and really engaging. This is, as I came in as a new governor, heard about the challenges out here, and we showed up, we learned, we listened, and we've been getting to work.
But when the governor asked the community groups what issues they're still facing, not everyone felt like they were seeing that work translate on the ground.
People are frustrated, people are scared, and they have...
Zaida Sanchez is the director of community organizing with Oregon Rural Action. She said that fear stems from lack of information, with many people, especially in the Spanish-speaking community, unaware of the danger.
Unfortunately, over and over again, we continue to find people that are not aware of the resources that are available, that there is a public health risk currently that we should be aware of, that continue to drink the contaminated water, that have been cooking with the water.
The Oregon Health Authority has partnered with community groups like Oregon Rural Action to get the word out and implore residents to have their wells tested. But Kristen Anderson Ostrom, executive director of the organization, said that the initial messaging fell flat.
During the outreach, the significant state outreach, working with all of the partners, this is the primary message. This message does not necessarily warn the public that there's a health risk. The CDC's health warnings look like this. This creates more urgency, right?
For her part, Kotek acknowledged that there was more that could be done.
So we need to up our game to make sure people do get the information. So I hear what you're saying.
Big questions still remain, though, according to Marisa Mendoza from the advocacy group Uvalcre.
And so for now, we're putting a Band-Aid on the problem and providing them with water deliveries. But of course, everyone wants to know what's next.
Kotek and Sixkiller laid out their plan. In the short term, they want to continue testing as many wells as possible and providing drinking water to the people who need it. But Ana Pinheiro, with Morrow County Public Health, pointed out that since the state's gotten involved, the pace of action has slowed. In the first 6 months after the emergency was declared, Pinheiro said her team of just 10 people tested more than 600 wells and installed 100 water treatment systems. In the year and a half since, some 1,800 wells have been tested, but only 76 water treatment systems have been installed.
What's going on? How is that with more time, more staff, more resources, we can accomplish less? And we need to let's make sure that we don't forget. We're doing this for the people, and we should do it with the people.
And it was that disconnect between the people on the ground and the people trying to provide solutions that stuck out most to Sanchez.
Right, like thank you for coming back and for meeting with us again, right? But I want to highlight everyone who's in this room right now. The majority of folks in this room right now aren't from here, aren't directly impacted community members, aren't well owners.
Again, Kotek acknowledged there was room for improvement.
We have a year under our belt. We haven't completely, I think, established 100% trust, I think, with the state, but I think we're making progress. Now
Looking a little further out in the medium term, Kotek and Sixkiller said it would be necessary to get some people connected to municipal water systems and off the well water they'd relied on for years. But that plan, it comes with its own challenges too.
To get folks extended into some communities for public water, it's not cheap. There'll be issues. There are going to be people who are like, I don't want to do that, or unless I get some financial assistance or whatever. That is real. And that is the midterm goal for some households.
In the second roundtable of the day with regional officials, those issues were put into stark relief. Morrow County Commissioner Roy Drago Jr. said it would be technically possible to extend public water to some of the affected residents, but that's just one of the hurdles.
The big hurdle is getting, a whole community to buy in, right? So those are some of the hurdles. I think we can navigate getting municipal water there. I think that's fairly doable. It's going to cost a lot of money.
As for the long-term plan, Kotek and Sixkiller hope to eventually see groundwater that is clean and drinkable. But that'll mean big changes for agriculture in the rural area, where it acts as one of the region's biggest economic drivers.
And when it comes to the root cause issue and the continued contamination, we just have to alter how we're doing business, right? We're having conversations with the port, with the users themselves coming off of ag. Look, this has been traditionally a byproduct of ag practices. What can we do differently? How can we change that?
Kotek said they're working with the port to secure loans to install a wastewater treatment system. And she said things would need to change on the agricultural side, too.
We do need to say, we're going to be doing this differently. We don't want 3 more decades of pollutants, right? That's got to change.
But she stopped short of calling for mandatory regulations to curtail the pollution. The biggest takeaway seemed to be that more transparency is necessary to establish trust with the community, even if that means admitting when you don't have all the answers.
There is value, I think, in going to the community and saying, we don't know what the answer is right now. We don't know how much it's going to cost. But we want you to know that there's going to be a process where this is the process we're going to follow.
And there remains a pretty big gap to bridge.
Of the folks who live here and the people that we work with on a daily basis, when we say we're coming to another meeting, they say, oh, another dog and pony show.
Thank you, everybody.
Only time will tell whether Wednesday's meetings were indeed just a show, or if real change is on the horizon.
Kale Williams joins me now. Kale, first I want to ask you, being there in person, you're able to kind of assess how people are doing and feeling. What did you get from Governor Kotek and the regional administrator of the EPA in this case?
Yeah, well, they did a lot more listening than they did talking, which I think is important. That's, they're out there to hear from the community about how these things are going. At the same time, these people have been listened to for a long time, and they would really like to see some stuff actually happen.
And you see that in the frustration from the community organizations when they're speaking up. What did you feel was their takeaway after the meeting when chatting with them?
Yeah, so I talked to a couple of them in the hallway, and they told me that they were a little concerned that folks like us, the media, there was 3 of us there, a print, radio, newspaper from out in Eastern Oregon, that this was kind of a show, that they thought that maybe the governor and the EPA administrator were looking for a photo opportunity. I didn't really get that sense from either of them, but they were concerned about that. And again, they really just want to see action.
So then, of course, that leads to the final, most obvious question. What are the tangible things that you're either looking for or that we should expect in the next couple of months to see progress here?
Well, yeah, that's what everybody was pushing for. How are we going to measure success? Governor Kotek said that they are working on coming up with some benchmarks. They're hoping to release them within the next 60 days of ways that they'll be able to measure success over the next year.
Okay, and I'm sure you'll be checking in within the next 60 days, if not shortly after, to see what those benchmarks are. Thank you, Kale. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Earlier this month, KGW launched our Solutions Project, a new brand of our content that not only explains issues in our communities, but what's being done about them. And this week on The Story, we've explored flaws in Oregon's mental health care system. The shred of hope here is that there are ongoing efforts to make big improvements, and that includes a program in nearby Washington County. If someone accused of a crime needs a mental health evaluation, it's a process that can take months. The courts need to do it in order to determine if that person can understand their charges and assist in their own defense. But the long wait for the evaluation, which can happen in jail, is harmful for everyone involved. And that's why the Washington County DA is championing what appears to be a faster way forward.
And we decided the state hospital was taking too long.
Washington County District Attorney Kevin Barton believes the county's rapid fitness to proceed process is part of the solution. Instead of waiting months for a defendant in jail to get a mental health evaluation from the state, Washington County works with private companies to complete tests within 2 or 3 weeks on average.
Because without this, people are waiting far too long for a competency or fitness evaluation.
That is correct. That hurts the person who's waiting because they often have a mental health issue, and so they can decompensate while they're waiting for that. It hurts the victim of the crime because they're waiting for justice to proceed forward, and that delay really hurts the criminal case. It hurts the jail where someone is being housed because we're taking a jail bed, which is a scarce resource, and we're using it for someone where we could potentially use it for somebody else where there's a greater public safety risk. And it also hurts the judicial system process in general because the more cases we have that are bogged down, the more public defenders we need to use, the more courtrooms we need to use, it just hurts the overall process.
Judge Rebecca Guptill presides over the mental health docket in Washington County.
Going through our rapid fitness process saves time, saves days, and reduces the amount of time someone is in custody. The amount of money saved is astronomical.
Nearly $2 million in savings just last year.
To the degree that someone else can copy us, they probably should. I think it's really working well.
Companies Lithia and Northwest Forensics conduct the evaluations. Last year in the county, they completed 100 rapid fitness tests. They still couldn't assess everyone, and Barton says more funding would increase the scope of the project to hire more evaluators and get all defendants evaluated more quickly.
Is this something you would advocate to expanding to other counties?
Absolutely. In fact, I think what ought to happen here is the state ought to take a look at what's working well. Let's replicate that and expand it.
Washington County isn't the only one using this program. Multnomah County has 4 rapid fitness exam slots each week, but that's still not enough to cover their need, as many defendants wait much longer. And both counties said they couldn't tell me exactly how many defendants needed mental health evaluations last year. Some still went through the state process. But judicial department leaders in both counties say they would strongly advocate expanding this program statewide. What do you think? Should it be expanded? Why or why not? Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. On tomorrow's show, we'll feature more of your comments that have come in throughout the week on this Uncommitted series we've been sharing and answer a few questions as well. And if you missed any of my previous Uncommitted coverage, you can catch up right now on KGW Plus. That's our free streaming app available now on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. And if that doesn't work for you, we have a new landing page on our website where all of the published Uncommitted stories are featured. Just head to kgw.com/uncommitted or head to the KGW YouTube page and look for Uncommitted. Up next on The Story, we're digging into the latest attempt by Portland city leaders to crack down on homeless camping. Last night, the mayor's office officially introduced its new plan. Commissioner Rene Gonzalez floated his own amendments that have gained attention recently. But did they move forward, and what comes next? Details when The Story returns. A quick sports note and an exciting day for Northwest hockey fans and for us here at KGW. Today we're announcing a new multi-year partnership with the NHL's Seattle Kraken. We'll start showing Kraken games this fall. KGW will carry more than 70 preseason, regular, and postseason games for free over our air. And we're not alone. Our partner stations in Seattle and Spokane will also carry these games. The exact schedule on our end will be developed once the NHL releases its schedule for the 24 and 25 season. A long night of debate and public input ended with the city of Portland one step closer to implementing new rules against homeless camps. Yesterday, Mayor Ted Wheeler's office officially presented his updated camping ordinance to the city council. Commissioners Carmen Rubio and Mingus Mapps also introduced amendments to the plan, while Commissioner Rene Gonzalez submitted his own plan that competed with Wheeler's. First, a rundown of the original proposal. If passed, you would not be able to block sidewalks or businesses. Public campers would not be allowed to start fires, have a chop shop, or too much trash. People offered reasonable shelter must take it. Otherwise, they could face fines up to $100 or 7 days in jail. The mayor emphasized yesterday because Portland's previous daytime ban is tied up in the court system, it's important to pass new policy as soon as possible.
Every day that we delay in implementing clear, reasonable regulations, we see the continued impact on our streets of our city, impacting not just those who are experiencing homelessness directly, but indeed every resident and every visitor to the city of Portland. What we tried to do here was, even though we sort of assume we're going to get sued, is make sure that we have the best possible ordinance to survive that process.
When introducing his plan, Commissioner Gonzalez acknowledged everyone in the city council is on the same page. No more unsanctioned camping. He wants that to happen by giving the mayor almost exclusive power to decide camping restrictions, Gonzalez does, starting with blanket ban on all public camping. Gonzalez says this would allow more flexibility to respond to new state and federal policies so that what happened to the daytime ban doesn't happen again.
I think that it was a mistake in hindsight to codify in such detail what we thought House Bill 3115 is requiring. Okay. Other jurisdictions have opted not to go with such a, including the city of Gresham, such a specific enumeration. It's too hard to understand, and it's too slow to adjust to realities on the ground.
After a couple hours of discussion, it was time to hear from the public. Among the more than 50 people who signed up to testify, we heard people call for further restrictions on camping and others who say the city council is not tackling the real issue.
Housing is a human right. Objectively reasonable shelter is not housing.
We know that housing first solutions with low barriers to entry are the gold standard for addressing homelessness. We also know that programs like Portland Street Response, when fully resourced, are better equipped than police to handle acute needs.
How is this not putting the cart before the horse when reasonable offers of shelter rarely exist even for those who want them?
Others argue the debate is ignoring safety issues surrounding unsanctioned encampments and tents on sidewalks. Portland Fire Chief Ryan Gillespie testified that over the last few years, they've responded to more and more fire calls that were houseless related. Last year, half of all fire deaths were houseless related. One woman who joined a lawsuit against the city back in 2022 says this issue continues to stress out the tens of thousands of people living with disabilities who struggle to navigate around encampments. She says it shouldn't be on them to keep sidewalks clear.
I have always volunteered at the warming shelters. This year I did not. Why? Because like the majority of my fellow Portlanders, I have compassion fatigue. I'm done having my mobility hampered and being disrespected by the leadership that allows this untenable situation to continue. If all the people opposed to this camping ban had volunteered at those warming shelters, they would not have had to close. Actions speak louder than words.
In the end, commissioners rejected Gonzalez's proposal and approved Wheeler's plan with amendments from Commissioners Rubio and Mapps with a 3-2 vote. Gonzalez and Dan Ryan were the no votes. Rubio's amendment requires Portland police to gather data on people arrested under the ordinance, and Mapps requires the formation of an executive team that would be responsible for programs related to homelessness and unsanctioned camping. That means Wheeler's plan with the 2 approved amendments will go to a second reading at a city council meeting likely next week, and from there, they can choose to hold a vote. Stay with us here on KGW. We'll feature some of your thoughts on open primaries when the story returns. Next week, KGW and the Oregonian are hosting a debate between the two candidates for Multnomah County District Attorney. We're giving you a chance to ask questions directly to candidates Mike Schmidt and Nathan Vasquez. Record a short video on your phone, then email it to debate@kgw.com. We also have instructions on, of course, kgw.com. And next week is the deadline to register to vote with a political party. Last night we told you about Oregon's closed primaries, meaning if you're not registered as a Republican or a Democrat, you'll only get to vote in the nonpartisan races for the primary. If you are registered to one of those parties, you can only vote in that party's races. The biggest chunk of Oregon's voters are actually outside of the two major parties. More than 43% of registered voters are non-affiliated, independent, or registered with a minor party, and they won't get to vote for any of the Democrats or Republicans until the general election in November. There is an effort underway to move Oregon to open primaries. The group All Oregon Votes says they won't get enough signatures this election cycle to make it to the ballot this time, but they'll try again in 2026. And plenty of you told us you'd be happy to support that effort. Most of you who wrote in last night were in favor of open primaries. Nancy wrote, "I fully support open primaries. It's not fair that independents are not allowed to have a say in all parts of the democratic process." Ann wrote, "Open primaries, exclamation point. All voices need to be heard. All qualified voters allowed to exercise their right. This will also put the onus on candidates to be more broadly appealing." But some of you say primaries should stay closed so that the party members are more invested in the outcome. Mark wrote, primaries are a time for a party to conduct party business without intrusion from outsiders. Suppose you habitually have a house meeting for your household. Should you be forced to accept the attendance and voice of your unaffiliated neighbor to intrude and put their 2 cents in on your style of living? I think not. That's the end of our show for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow for an update on another issue that I've been covering for the last year and a half, ambulance response times in the company AMR in our region, the Greater Portland region. What was just decided in Clackamas County regarding the ambulance provider, and an update on the company's performance. That's coming up tomorrow night, right here on The Story. We'll see you then.